Today we'll be discussing the Empire's fatal flaws when it comes to the Dark Trooper project on today's Star Wars video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video. Today we will be discussing the Mandalorian, and specifically its reintroduction of the Dark Troopers into Star Wars canon. Dark Troopers were of course first introduced to the Star Wars universe in Dark Forces, which was the first game to feature fan favorite Kyle Katarn. Dark Troopers in Legends were similar in many ways. There were 3 different phases. Dark Troopers were incredibly deadly and a very high-tech weapon, and they were envisioned as a next-generation soldier. But there are also some major differences between Legends and canon, one of which will be the topic of today's video. And we're discussing a major flaw in the Dark Trooper. Now, this isn't a mistake that the Mandalorian made or anything like that, but it's a choice the Empire in lore made that I think will come back to seriously hurt the potential of the Dark Trooper. So let's get it out of the way. Dark Trooper evolution in Star Wars canon is the opposite of Legends. Early Dark Trooper variants, at least according to Dr. Pershing, started off with an organic operator, probably a human, within a suit or exoskeleton, but that was seen as a weakness, and the current generation Dark Trooper is literally just a battle droid. Now I will say there are some advantages to this. The Dark Troopers are pretty much kept prepped in storage because of the power draw of their armor. This is some sort of cold storage system, and this would not be possible for a human being operated Dark Trooper. You can't keep a living person in a suit and have them survive unless you really go full Dark Empire style and remove everything but their brain. So the current generation of Dark Trooper has the advantage of being able to deploy pretty quickly, although I will also say the suit needs some time to start up, so I wonder if that wouldn't be enough time to have the operator loaded as well. There are other advantages though. A droid doesn't feel fear the same way that a living being does. A droid has no concern for self-preservation unless that's programmed in, and doesn't feel anything like pity or fear. However, the Empire's also managed to counteract what would be a benefit in that sense as well. We've seen the Empire produce very highly programmed individuals. Death Troopers were probably the best example of this in Star Wars canon, but we also have people who've been literally brainwashed to follow the Empire's commands. So I do feel like there is conditioning sufficient to produce soldiers of droid-like quality, thus negating any advantage that you'd get through soldiers who show no fear or whatever else. Alright, so that's all well and good, but I still haven't explained why you would want to avoid using droids. I've talked about the benefits, but what are the drawbacks? And in the Star Wars universe, droids are interesting. They are very advanced in certain areas. For example, droids are routinely able to process incredible amounts of numbers, and they can hack and program other machinery. Some droids, like 3PO units, even have their own personality. However, combat droids in particular really lack one thing: creativity. There's no doubt that the troopers are deadly. They're incredibly powerful, they're strong, but they're not very smart. We see that they're almost singularly minded when it comes to how they engage in combat. Now, that makes them quite terrifying. That scene with the Dark Troopers nearly pounding through that starship door as Din Djarin is basically just barely managing to fight one is really intimidating, but single-mindedness also comes with a downside, and that's predictability. We see droid starfighters, for example. In the canon and Legends, despite it being a relatively high fatality position, it's usually still organic beings piloting starfighters. That's because droids just do not have that je ne sais quoi that an organic pilot has. They fly too predictably, they can't make creative and rash decisions sometimes on the spot that might help them stay alive. They're usually pretty easy targets for other pilots, so if you are going to use droids like the CIS did, you usually produce them in extreme numbers to make up for the lack of quality in one individual ship. Now, in a universe which has programming and robotics as advanced as the Star Wars universe, that's not a guarantee, but that just is how it works in Star Wars. We even see that when it comes to turrets. Laser cannons and turbo lasers in Star Wars are usually operated by human gunners. In Children of the Jedi, of all places, Luke Skywalker notes how a particular gun, is firing so accurately that it could not have been droid powered. In that case, he was actually sort of wrong, because the ship that gun was attached to, the Eye of Palpatine, had a very advanced AI, but generally speaking, his assumption holds true. So when it comes to Dark Troopers, which are not mass-produced like a B-1 battle droid or a droid starfighter would be, you want them to be not only deadly, but also effective, creative, and unpredictable. We see the shortcomings of the Dark Trooper in that battle with Din Djarin. The Dark Trooper has him beat, essentially. He has him against the wall with his guard down, and what does he do? He continues to just pound his skull, which obviously isn't working. Now, admittedly, some humans or some organics would have also tried to do that, because the head is the most vulnerable place on the human body, but I also think that a really skilled warrior with his experience would have recognized that although Din Djarin's armor does protect his vital organs, his helmet can be taken off, and there are spots where his flesh is exposed. I mean, if you're pounding Din Djarin in his ribs where his armor doesn't protect, you'll most likely incapacitate him to the point where you can continue the battle and then pound through his helmet if you want to secure the final blow. And as I mentioned, droids are missing creativity, but they're also missing experience. An Imperial who had fought a Mandalorian using Beskar would know more about how to attack it, as they would know more about the kind of weaponry that Mando could have hidden in his armor. When it comes to a line of super advanced, very expensive, literally top of the line warriors for your faction, I just don't think it makes sense to use droids. Use a droid body. Use the same material the Dark Troopers use. By the way, I think some of you before watching this video probably guessed that I was going to say the mistake is not using Beskar, but that's expensive, so funds are limited, but I do think using organic beings is definitely the better call. The absolute best option, if you can do so, if you can pass the surgical, medical, and cost limitations, would be to make a pure cyborg, a being which can still think, but which is limited to the suit, kind of like a Darth Vader. Maybe use some sort of tool to limit their free will to a degree so they can still be expressive during combat, but aren't going to try to run away from your ship, for example. But I mean, there are also secondary benefits to having living beings inside your warriors. First of all, it allows a Force user, like an Emperor Palpatine, to reach out to them, and I've actually guessed that that's why the Empire before this point never had a wide-scale battle droid army. Palpatine liked to be able to call out to his minions, and we see that in Dark Empire, for example, in Star Wars Legends. I also think droids are generally a bit more susceptible to certain issues, computer viruses, sometimes the lack of a central command hub, and of course, just the lack of general intelligence. Interestingly, a central command hub may be a good idea for the Dark Trooper project, especially if you do have some sort of super ship like the Archammer in Star Wars Legends. We know that B-1 battle droids were much more effective before the Battle of Naboo, and once the CIS stopped using those droid control ships, because the droids had to rely on their own processing, their skills and effectiveness drastically decreased. Of course, if you do have a pilot for your suit, you do introduce vulnerabilities, the flesh within the armor that a droid doesn't have, and you actually have to give up the interior space, which would otherwise be used for machinery to house the body. But still, I totally think it's worth it, and there are other options, including control from an external source. Picture Moff Gideon with an Xbox controller, and then if that source goes down, then you have the routine droid programming pop in for a backup. But guys, that's just my opinion. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Did you enjoy the Dark Troopers like I did? I was so happy to see them back in Star Wars Legends. I think them being all droids is cool, notwithstanding some of the tactical and strategical issues we discussed in this video. But I look forward to reading your guys' comments, and until next time, be safe, have a good one, may the Force be with you.